So I have Rohit here. I'm pretty sure you would have read about him already, but since I have something more to share. Rohit has been an early member at notable SaaS organization in the MarTech space. He has built and scaled teams at companies like WebEngage, CleverTap, and currently he is at ZoomInfo. He was heading the growth team at Incent, which was recently acquired by ZoomInfo, and he is currently handling the branding, narrative, and growth at ZoomInfo. He finds great joy in taking marketing startups from 0 to 1 and scaling them up, scaling the brand, and writing the narrative for their hypergrowth to follow. So, absolute joy, Rohit, hosting you here. Thoda says Thoda Thursday is on right now.
Yeah, that's a tagline that had just stuck with people, and I have just like started to live with it.
I think it has started resonating in a jingle format. It's easier for people to remember you as well. I spoke to one of my friend, and I told him that I'm hosting Rohit. He is from ZoomInfo, and he's, yeah, the guy who says Thoda says, that guy, right? And he was like, yeah, Thoda says, yeah, he's the one. So yeah,
Oh,
branding, it does work. That's a feedback I've got for you. Your branding does work there.
I
Awesome.
take that as a positive feedback, and I'll maybe double down on it.
Exactly, that's one. Get the data and double down on what is working for you. So
Absolutely.
yes,
That's marketing.
if we are ready, I'll jump into the questions. We have the habit of trying to finish webinars on time. I know there has been too many webinars right now, but none finish at the right time. But then we'll try to do one such thing today. So you ready for the questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. So obviously, I want to start with a very obvious thing. You recently got acquired, so congrats on that first. For Incent, the entire team on ZoomInfo. And can you tell us like how things are changed? For the outsider, what exactly happens when a company gets acquired? What are the benefits? What are the challenges that revolve around it?
Understood. So the entire acquisition piece was a very interesting experience for me. More so because the two companies were of very different sizes, and like everything was different about both these companies, and still there were things that resonated, and that's why maybe Arjun and Prasanna took that decision. So I'll just maybe unpack that in a bit more detail. So when the entire news broke to us, we were basically like expecting our Series A fundraise, rather than we got to know that we'll be a part of a much bigger company now, and that came as a shocker. But at the same time, it had to be done in that particular manner, because ZoomInfo is a public listed company, and there are various legalities that come into play whenever there's a M&A procedure going on. So it came as a surprise to all of us, and very few people on both sides of the table knew about this. So you would understand that when the news is such a secret, and the transition that happens has to happen very fast when that begins.
Yep.
And it's basically like on day zero, nobody knows anything, nothing, and then it has to like start from there, and things go very fast. As a employee, or as a team member of Incent, the experience was very new to all of us. But I think the team at ZoomInfo has been there, done that, I guess, because the kind of processes that were implemented, and like everything was planned out to the T. And hence for us it was a very different experience, because we were startup folks from like all across our experience, and we didn't understand this entire orchestrized onboarding and all documented processes. And we were just like overwhelmed, but at the same time we were navigated very well into the process. So yeah, I think there's an experience that will come in really handy when I'm onboarding larger teams, because I haven't had this kind of an experience personally, either being done to me or me passing it on to people that I have onboarded. So yeah.
That's awesome. So was there any particular probably this aha moment when you see something which surprised you when this particular transition happened, like wow. And that way, one thing is everything was in process to the T. That was maybe one thing, but personally one thing you felt like, man, I'm gonna learn this, or I'm gonna follow this.
uh, there were a couple of things actually. So when I said that both Incent and ZoomInfo are very different and the same at the same time, is what I really meant by that is you would expect a 3,000 people company to function like a 3,000 people company.
Yeah.
But I mean, the first day, like Henry coming to greet us,
Mhm.
in his like early morning times, like he had to woke up like really early to make us comfortable and greet us and welcome us at our time. That was a very good gesture. That did not like really, the wow part was something that came in later. So imagine like this was a day before where Henry was there and he was greeting us and that we were to join Zoom Info and so on. The day the launch was to happen at 6:30 p.m. India time, the PR went public, right? That
Okay.
Insent and Zoom Info are now one, and all of the news stories along with it. You wouldn't believe the speed of it. At 7:30 p.m., like within an hour, the entire Insent team was sitting with the HR team, and our onboarding was going on. And
Wow.
we had all our Zoom Info email ID, Zoom Info Slack, Zoom Info CRM, Zoom Info, like everything that you can think about, every login that you can expect, that you can have at a, and also like slated logins. So for product team, different logins,
Yeah.
market team, like all the tools, stacks, everything that you would imagine, that you would get maybe a couple of weeks after joining a company. It was right there, 7:30 p.m., an hour after Insight became Zoom Info. We had everything that would make us successful from day one, not even day two even. So
Uh,
that was the surprise, and like I was blown away. Like, okay, things can happen this fast at this scale as well. So yeah, that was the wow moment for me.
That's amazing. I think it made me wow as well, while hearing that in just 1 hour. That's like, wow. That's again, wow. uh,
I'll tell you, like my friends, looking at the news, they were obviously happy for me and excited, and they were calling me. And
mm.
then they're texting that, dude, why are you not picking up? And I'm like, dude, you don't believe I'm on, I'm on a HR onboarding call. They're like, what the hell is, like, how can that happen? Like, yeah, I'll tell you more about it once I'm done with this. So
I'm gonna send them these recording later on to hear the entire process out. That's amazing, man. That's seriously nice to hear. So, following up on that, you said that the onboarding was happening and you got all this tech and you were introduced to the next team, etc. So, how does this strategy shift happens? You have been working on a product. I'm pretty sure you had your quarterly, yearly plans planned out already for Incent, and this happens all of a sudden. So, now you're a part of a bigger team. How does the strategy shift happen? Do they continue with the own scale, or as a marketer, how exactly that affected or impacted your activities?
so I think that's a very fundamental but very important question to understand. One is when you are in a seed funded stage. Uh, the good thing that happened was Arjun could not tell us that we might get acquired, but he mentally prepared us by saying that, hey, we would be raising Series A much faster than what we planned. So you must plan for bigger budgets because, uh, like, even if we run through our budget, like the seed fund level budget that we have, so maybe like call it X. So plan for at least 3X. And 3 to 5X bracket, because we might be raising much sooner than what you expect or what we expected. So I had, say, plan A, that no fundraise happens till like the year end, or plan B, we raise fund in March.
Mhm.
So we had like X versus 5X plan. So we had that. Now, once the acquisition happened, I already had the 5X plan. So that helped me transition that. And that credit goes to Arjun for not telling me, but preparing me for the newer environment that I was going to work at. But and so obviously that was there, but obviously like it was not as simple that you as you would as it comes out to be, uh, because in larger organizations, obviously Zoom Info does not have just chat. I mean, chat is maybe the smallest bucket in terms of revenue that there is,
Yeah.
right? Because like it's an early company, it's an early product, it's understandable. There are multiple products, and like if you go into the depth of like the perception of Zoom Info is that it's a data company. It is not. It's a behemoth platform, if I can call that. The workflows there, marketing, like there's a product called Engage, there's a Dozy system that goes around, there's like multiple smaller acquisitions that were done. And then obviously we did not know about the whale that was going to be acquired in terms of Chorus. So because yeah, again, like public listed company acquiring a major company, so
Yeah.
that had to kept secret, so we did not know. Now there was so much secrecy as well as like planning, because there's secrecy obviously that I cannot know about the chorus acquisition, but then my marketing plans had to take that into consideration, because that will bubble up to the larger target. So for example, like imagine my scale that I was operating. So when inside, like we were at a sub 1 million ARR
Okay.
when we got acquired. Now sub 1 million ARR to a marketing org that answers to 800, 600, 650 million ARR.
Okay.
Like, how do you even calculate that was a bit difficult for me. Like I'll maybe, okay, I have always been an honest guy. I'll be there. So the first budget that I sent for approval to my CMO, and he's like, he looks at the budget and he's like, Rohit, are you sure that you can get us the leads in this budget? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm asking for 5 times the budget. You are asking for 5 times the lead. I mean, that should, like, I'm not very, very sure, because obviously data will tell us afterwards, like once we run the campaigns. But I mean, plus minus 20%, it should be in the vicinity.
Yeah.
Like, this is our just the SEM budget for brand protection that we run for the month. And this is our entire marketing budget. I mean, yeah, dude, at least make it 5 times, and then we'll discuss where to spend that, because you're thinking very small. So now I'm thinking at the rate of say $100,000 and $500,000 a month, which was unheard of. Like, I was like thousands of dollars in Insent budget was a good budget for me. And so that learning curve was maybe a couple of back and forth with my CMO, with my VP of marketing and VP of ops. So there's this entire sub organization dedicated to just creating the funnel. Like, how crazy is that? Because like we operate on just a HubSpot plus Excel sheet kind of a situation, and then there's entire sub org that just creates funnel based on predictive analytics and creating models. So that was there. Like, all of these learnings coming into me, and I was like absorbing, as well as scaling at the same time. So it was that's why I call it, like, I cannot call it anything else. I know interesting is a very vague adjective, but interesting it was, because and it still is. Like, I get into meetings where I have no idea that, okay, this also happens in a organization of this size. So yeah, it's still going on.
That's amazing. So, the best part is I had someone, ask this question about budget as well. We were having this discussion, and, I am going to place it for the last, at the end of this conversation, but, good that you brought it up as well. So the next one, I want to ask you is, you spoke about how exactly the strategy shift happened. They understand the chat publication, etc. But how do you adapt to the positioning of the product? You obviously mentioned that, ZoomInfo, obviously, we know about the platform. It's not just a data company anymore. It was, but not anymore. They are getting into a lot of scenes right now. So which means they also have a vision for the chat application as well, moving forward with it. So when Insent got acquired, and, understanding what their vision was for, Insent, and adapting to changing the positioning, if at all it is necessary, how does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So Insent had to change the positioning, because there's an easy way to explain this, and there's this more elaborate way. I'll try to take the easy way, and then I'll maybe elaborate. So Insent, why, to understand the repositioning effort and why it was easy at the same time, you have to understand why Insent existed. I mean, Insent, like Arjun had this entire vision manifesto that sort of pulled me into the company, and that's like entire Insent team was very motivated by it. That and I remember that particular line, and I'll just repeat it, that anything worth making takes at least a decade to make.
Okay, that's nice.
And that was, and then he basically explained what's the vision for Insent, and it was not a competitor to Drift, as in like a replacement for Drift. The sale was not as easy as, you're paying 30,000 for Drift, why don't you pay 15,000 for Insent? No. Yeah. We're like, hey, if you're a Drift customer and if it suits you, go ahead and use them.
Stay with it.
Yeah. We are solving a much bigger issue and a much bigger problem within the conversational marketing paradigm.
Okay.
So conversational marketing came into the world not because, and it was accepted by the market overall, not because people wanted bots instead of forms.
Yeah.
People wanted conversations. Like imagine, like Arjun used to tell us this story that, hey, if you're maybe a Chanel's showroom or maybe some luxury brand that you can imagine. Now there are always two kinds of people that come through your door. Like one would be the window shoppers who will come in, like what's the latest trend. They'll maybe click a couple of pictures for the Instagram and they'll move out. And then there'll be this other person who has the purchasing power, who has the intent, and that's why he or she is there in the store. Now, implementing a chat bot is basically having a reception counter where, like, may I help you kind of a situation, right? Everybody comes there and, hey, what's the new trend that has come in? Where's this section? Where's that? And that you can do it. And then there's this army of salespeople who can identify a high value prospect rather than a window shopper kind of a customer, and they can proactively reach out, understand, hey, this customer comes from this particular purchase history. This is like last time he purchased a beach bag. Now he can now he'll be interested in a brown bag and so on. And then you need know all the demographics and the past purchase history, and now you can talk to that person like a human and make a high ticket sale.
Yeah.
That was the entire concept. Now, when you think about it, Insent very naturally fits into the ZoomInfo platform. Why? Because we are a we were a conversational marketing platform that sat on top of very deep data integrations with your data providers, with your data platforms, with your CRMs, with your marketing automation platforms. And that's how we enabled you figuring out what is your high value prospect that is now on your website, so that he or she does not have to interact with the bot. Rather than the sales reps can directly proactively reach out and give them a red velvet kind of a reception.
Yep.
So that's how, like, since ZoomInfo has actually it's objectively the best data possible in terms of technographics, firmographics, individual data, business data, all of that combined, it makes a lot of sense that it can manifest that data into a conversational setup utilizing. So that integration was very flawless, and in fact very fast, even because we literally had to like unplug from different data sources that we were using before we were a part of the ZoomInfo platform, and then deeply integrate with just ZoomInfo, so that that power is very deep as well as very huge, rather than just being a generic integration. So that's how that integration was so smooth, and that's how the positioning did not really have to shift from what Insent used to represent till now. Because what basically has changed is that, hey, we integrate with all your data platforms. Now we say that, hey, ZoomInfo has all the data anyway. Now you can integrate with your CRM map and everything else, and we are still doing the same job, but in a much better, more integrated ecosystem. And that's why the positioning hasn't really changed as much.
It's amazing. I think, two big things I want to take away from this. I had a couple of years stint in the data industry as well. And the common phrase there is data is the new oil. And, hearing from you how it has traversed its way to conversational marketing today, and the power of getting your data bank behind, in front of your chatbot is like an amazing thing to have as well. But the best key point, I would take away from that is what, you mentioned that Arjun said, any product that, is worth making will take a decade, because obviously we live in that never settle sort of culture right now. Everything has to happen fast. You have to scale fast. You have to be an entrepreneur in your teenage and, sell your company by 21 and start the next company by 22. That's sort of the culture. But for someone to come in and say that, it's going to take a decade, man. And it just, takes guts to come in and say that, first of all, forget about doing or enabling in real time. But yeah, that's nice to hear out of that.
I'll tell you, I think I need to add this because I really appreciated this in Arjun, and I still do. As I remember that we were all going through that tough phase when the second wave hit, and Arjun was in the US. So he only understood all of this from a very second level connection that he had in India through us and through his extended family and so on. So he literally said this, that, hey man, I understand the situation, but I cannot empathize as much because I'm not there. But hey, if you and your team just want like a couple of weeks off, just to recalibrate, rethink, focus on your family, do that, because we are here for the long term. When you think about whether I'm going to hit the quarterly goal, if you remove 15 days out of it, you might not. But when you put it in the perspective of a 10-year time period,
Yeah.
15 days taking for your mental health doesn't really amount to much. So go ahead and do that. And that blew my mind off, because I have always been in that hustling kind of a scenario, and I don't blame. I have learned a lot. I Everything that I have today, I owe it to the companies that I've worked with. But this is where Arjun was very different in his approach to building the company, building the culture, and everything else. So I have to give credit to him for building such an amazing company.
It's amazing, man. Kudos from my end as well. The last 1 minute, it's gonna go straight to us, and I'm gonna clip it and then mention it specifically for him. That's really amazing to hear from somebody. Thanks for sharing that as well, Rohit. So yes, next question. This is something from our previous conversation, which I wanted to pick. You got onboarded and everything happened fast, and now you're working with a pretty international team as well, not just with the previous team. And you mentioned the word called asynchronous communication during our chat as well. And we obviously are working behind the same terminology, and would like to hear from you how exactly it is impacting your productivity as such, working with an international team in an asynchronous mode, using the screen recording tools to send out replies instead of email, which is getting much faster. So how exactly is that helping you right now?
Absolutely. So I have loved, like, the first time that and we all, like, let me dial it back a little. We are all camera shy people by default.
Yeah.
uh, and like this has not been natural for me, at least before the pandemic hit. So sitting in front of a camera and talking for a longer period of time, in fact, I have had a couple of discussions with my good friends who are very natural at it, like being on the stage and everything. And it has also featured in one of my New Year's resolution to go more on the stage. So like I want
That's
to build
nice.
that context. So for people who are hearing this, uh, it's very uncomfortable for me where I'm doing this. Now, having said that, when I discovered that, hey, there's this entire new way of communication, like the entire, and I'll give credit where it's due. I think screen recording was only looked at it as a utility, or maybe a feature, or maybe a reference kind of a thing, or documenting kind of a thing, before Loom came into the picture with creating all of that posting. And I know you guys play in the same space, but like when I talk about conversational marketing, I cannot not talk about Drift, because what they did for the entire industry was really
Yeah.
so. For your industry, I think credit is due where it's due. So when I saw that, hey, Loom is actually uh, saying that you can use the tool in certain ways. Like, I am not saying that I still use Loom. I'm not, like, it's a great product, but at the same time, there are multiple other and better alternatives. I'll just put it there in the market. Uh, but yeah, the way of thinking changed then, where I saw, hey, my CEO is waking up when I'm going to sleep. There's, it's actually very counterproductive to find a time slot that's either uncomfortable for me or uncomfortable for him, because it's going to be with a 12-hour difference. It's always going to be, and also every back and forth, it's taking a couple of days, because you'll have to find the slot that is doable for both of you, and then you'll have to go back to that slot. And then in meetings, you're really not doing anything rather than one-way communication, and then the other guy saying, hey dude, I got it, let me spend some time and then I'll get back to you. That's literally it. Whatever happens while in the, like, in the documentation phase, or maybe you're building a deck together, maybe you're discussing about a feature or a GTM plan, that's what basically happens for the first couple of 3 or 4 meetings. So these 3 or 4 meetings, this is what we used to do. Like, I used to create a, maybe when, so for example, if we are creating a product deck, I'll create the basic structure of it, the positioning statement, the positioning deck that usually goes out. I'll create it, I'll record a video, and then I'll send it to all the people. So we had one person sitting in Canada, we had Arjun sitting in the US, we had another sales leader sitting in the West Coast, and then we had our product marketing sitting in Chennai. So rather than bringing all of them in one room, I would record the video and send it on the channel. Somebody would watch it at 9 a.m. in the morning, somebody would watch it at 2 a.m. in the night, basically like their daytime. And within 24 hours, I'll have the consolidated replies either in video form or in comments on the doc, or in the comments thread in Slack. Now, like, instead of 48 hours, I have actually, like, drilled it down for 30 minutes of my time in creating that video, and then 30 minutes going through the comments. So the cycle becomes at least half, if not less than that, at least half in the productivity level goes up by that. I think vMaker is an absolute great product there as well. So I think like tools are tools. You can like one suits you and the other suits
Yeah.
people. But I think asynchronous communication is a productivity hack, and also it documents uh, all of the thought processes that you went through the entire process of creating something. So when you look back and actually deconstruct your way of working as well as the thought process that goes behind it, you pass it on to the younger people in your team or the less experienced folks in your team. They'll get exposed to your thought process and the entire journey of you arriving at the positioning deck rather than just looking at the positioning deck. And that's a very very interesting training by osmosis kind of a process that is a byproduct of the entire asynchronous communication piece that I really want to evangelize.
It's amazing. I think it's been a common feedback for us as well. Instead of just sharing the presentation, the moment you share probably a screen recorded video wherein you walk them through the presentation, it also helps them to understand the context. Like this was my thought process while I put out this design or put out this presentation or whichever it is. And I think the learning has been a real add-on. People who's looking into the video later on, they also learn stuff. I think that's a new add-on, which I've understood today. I think that's something we can capitalize on that as well in the next messaging that goes out. Thanks for adding that, Rohit. So I said we will be trying to complete in the given time, but then we have crossed it. But still, this conversation has been very conversational, so I'm just enjoying this conversation. Hope you do it too. So one question, I know we've been talking a lot about this acquisition and marketing so far. So I just want to take one step out of this, and I want to ask you this question because I know you have been a constant content creator on LinkedIn as well, been following your content there. So it sort of this came from Balaji Srinivasan's tweet wherein he coined this call. We are kind of moving towards from what is it called, the financial economy or the dot-com boom, and then came the software economy, then the fintech boom happened, and now we are in a creators economy. And pretty soon with the blockchain coming in, we will be moving towards an investor economy wherein you will see a lot of investors around instead of seeing creators. So at this moment it's all about the creators economy. Like you don't need to have a formal education today, or in order to start earning. You can just be a content creator, and that opens up a lot of opportunities for you in this, at least digital forum. So how exactly do you think brands can thrive on this? Obviously they have to move from the traditional form of content, but apart from this, what else can they do to capitalize this creators economy role?
I have a very boring and a very simple answer to this, and why I say this is because, again, it's one of those classic cliches that it's simple, not easy. The reason why most brands fall flat when it comes to B2B communication, at least because that's where I know a couple of things and that's where I can comment, is brands don't have a point of view. They sit on the fence. They play it safe. And I'm not saying like not playing it safe is basically commenting on the entire Taliban, Afghanistan, Kashmir, USSR, Uzbekistan, not those kind of topics.
Yeah.
But you'll have to stand for something, right? All the good B2B brands that are built right now, like you can see that being built in front of your eyes. People say that, hey, Drift is famous because they maybe evangelize the entire conversational marketing. Gong is famous because they are very edgy. Descript is famous because of their informational video. No, they're not. They're famous because they stand for something beyond the product.
Yeah.
And that's what is missing in most B2B narratives, that B2B brands don't stand for anything. Like, what are you? I'm an email marketing platform. Yeah, sure. I want to rally behind email. No, nobody wants to rally behind that. Why Drift is such a powerful brand? Because they say that, hey, B2B marketing, it's high time that we get conversations involved. It was not about building a chatbot. Gong said that, hey, it's high time that we get the opinions out of the sales process and we bring in data. It was not about transcribing sales calls. So that's the problem, and that's where most B2B brands fall flat, is they don't have a point of view to this world. And whenever they have it, and also they fall into the very easy way out of serving too many people, whether they are their best customers or not. So that's where the point of view falls flat as well. You have to have the customers that really believe in you, and that's why you create a tribe out of it. um,
Yeah.
so I think that's where they fall flat. All of the successful brands have something to say, something to some point of view that is bigger than their product, bigger than the market that they're serving, bigger than the end result of their plans and pricing. And the boring ones are serving everybody and saying everything possible. So
That's
yeah.
nice. That's really amazing. I think, I agree with you on that. When a brand starts cut loose, when they start adding something more than their product, it's just want you to be associated with that product. Any fancy brand for that matter. People just love us being associated with the product, and that translates to the last thing you said. You build a tribe out of your product. The best example I can think of is Notion. Always, the platform grew, because of the community they had, and people came out to support the product with templates and other functionalities, which actually took the product to the next level. So that's nice. And most importantly, if there's one thing early stage startups can take out of this, I would personally recommend the word he said, wherein you treat all your customers because for the context you built with, and the tribe you're built with, not just because they're paying me, I'm going to treat them well. If they're not paying me, they're not going to treat. That's never the case, and it's going to take you on the long run. That's amazing, Rohit. I think that's pretty much what I had in bucket, and this has been such a great conversation, at least for me. I've been hearing like a lot of good insights, and I sort of felt like it's very it's not scripted or sort of thing. Just because he wants to talk in front of camera, he's saying me all jargons and everything. I had a boring answer, I had a very boring answer, I had a simple answer. Everything started in that way. This is a boring answer, but still I'm going to say this is a simple answer, but there is a detailed version of it. So thanks for being very transparent about the replies as well. I think that is what that made this conversation much more enjoyable for me. So yeah, you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, what I really want to say, like why I say things in the way I say them is because marketers as a tribe always want to chase the next shiny thing. And I think that like after reading the classics of marketing and then going deep in them, I have realized, I have this self-awareness that everything great that could have been said about marketing has already been said. I'm not saying that you cannot do something new. I'm just saying that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you do the basics right, in the right context of your brand, not like copying playbooks. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you understand the fundamentals right and pull it in your context, I think marketing is not a rocket science that people make it out to be.
That is true. That is true. You just have to go back, look into the history books, and just apply it according to the current scenario and your product or service. It's great, man. I have a couple of questions coming your way. This was sent to me earlier. So first one is, name one best thing and one challenging thing which you experienced after the acquisition. I can take probably the onboarding thing as the best thing which you started with. If you have another one, please go for it. If not, then the most challenging thing you experienced after the acquisition. So just the two.
So I'll not repeat those answers because those are the easy way out. I'll maybe add another layer on that.
Okay.
So I have learned from people by reaching out to them in the past. Like I cold email Dave Gradat and I cold email David Cancel, and I sort of talked to them to understand how they were building Drift in 2018. Like I was one of those guys, hey, that you want to learn, like shoot your shot kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when I came in here, I saw that my current CMO is the guy who headed marketing at Intercom before this. The product guy that I sit with on a weekly call was the director of product at Demandbase. My immediate reporting boss is basically the head of growth for Kaspersky worldwide. Now imagine these guys were the guys that I used to cold email to get on a call with. And maybe once in a while, once in 6 months, I get to sit with them to understand how they are operating, what are the things that I can pick from there and implement here. Now I get free time with them. Whenever their calendar is empty, I'll just drop a message that, hey, can we get on a quick 15-minute, 30-minute, no agenda sync, just to pick each other's brain. That's a thing that I cannot quantify in the numbers, that the money that ZoomInfo is paying me, or uh, the perks and then the salaries that you can have.
Yeah.
It's something that is unquantifiable, and is, honestly, I'll tell you, is an unfair advantage as compared to the opportunities that were available before the acquisition happened.
Got it.
That is one of the best thing. The worst thing is, I mean, I cannot sugarcoat this enough, and I don't want to, but with a company who has scaled up to 650 million ARR, there are things that will be there which suits their way of working, because that has worked. And
Yeah.
you have to, in a 30 people company, you really don't have to worry about anything. You can say, hey, this tool is not working. You can slash it. Like, you can remove your credit card there, buy another tool, put your credit card there, and then you like restart from zero. In a company where like it's a 3,000 people company, 7 offices and all of those, there's a procurement process, there's an integration process. There, like one stack removal, one tool you tweak, and the butterfly effect of that is so huge that you might actually lose thousands, if not millions. And I have heard case studies where like we have lost leads worth millions of dollars because we removed one stack and put in another. So that's a challenge that comes with hyper scale.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's another way to work around it. But yeah, that's a thing. Like the independence to experiment gets restricted by the stakes that are so high that if it breaks, you are basically like you are messing up a very big thing.
I think it'll turn into another intern story around the internet, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah. So the stakes.
But I guess, if I listen to the perks, which you just mentioned above, I think this is what the pay, I guess. If they are gonna promise you 15 minutes of time with the people you just mentioned, then well, I'm willing to do that,
Dude, they are like on my weekly call list, the people that I just mentioned. So like, imagine their time worth, and they're spending it with me.
Yeah.
Teaching their, like, the guy who built Demandbase, I am pretty sure that he wouldn't reply to my cold emails if we were not in the same company. I'm not saying that he's not a well-behaved person or something. It's just that he wouldn't have the time.
The priority matters.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
and now we're building a product together. Like, imagine that.
That is a great story for the day, actually. So one more question before I leave you for the day is the one which was on budget. So this was an interesting one which I had to take, but I was a bit reluctant asking this. But since you brought it up, I'm just going to go and shoot it your way. Having more budget, is it a luxury or is it an added pressure?
I'll maybe give a parallel answer to this. So there was this research that a university in America did, was about how much happiness is correlated with money.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was, happiness is directly proportional to money till the amount of $7,000 per month.
Okay.
And then it plateaus. So after that, you have to latch on your happiness index to other things in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the Maslow's hierarchy comes in place and so on. Like, I don't want to get into that discussion, but that's where it is. Why I wanted to say that out loud is because when you bring the budget question in there, is the happiness correlated to the budget? When I say happiness, is basically deploying all the ads that you can think about, buying any tool that you want to, right? All of that comes in, and you can create as crazy brand campaigns that you want. Like, when we acquired Chorus, we went ahead and bought the first page of Wall Street Journal across America. Like, I could not, like, when I saw that plan, I was like, dude, what even? And
it's
all approved. Now with the rebranding project going live, we have bought so many billboards that it's not even funny. So all of that is happiness. But then after a while, with the like the 7,000 mark comes, the 7,000 mark in a personal earning thing also comes with the budget. So after a while, you feel like, hey, it's the same playbook at $100,000 mark. It's the same playbook at 1 million, maybe. It's just the 10x difference. So after, say, maybe $100,000 per month, the happiness of experimentation goes away. So it falls flat. Now, after the 100,000 marks, you actually start to feel the pressure, because now you're spending considerable money. It's not petty change anymore. So you'll have to be accountable for it. That stress makes you more productive, makes you more effective. But yes, it comes with its own set of pressure.
I think it comes at a cost for sure. But then it is worth.
It is worth, right? Anything worthwhile learning has to come with pressure. Otherwise you are not really learning anything until you are uncomfortable with it.
That's amazing, man. I think, with that, we are done for the day. Anything which I missed you want to share, Rohit?
Not really as such. I think we have had a very fulfilling conversation. And I think everything across the topic and more. I think I've blabbered more than my fair share of time. So I'll just, I'll just end it there.
Thanks, Rohit. I think this has been like a new set of conversation for me. Usually I know it used to be funny because mostly I know the people whom I invite a bit personally, so it was easy for me. But this time I think this is the first time we are conversing. Just for the webinar, I reached out to you, and thanks for accepting that. But this has been like a very friendly conversation. I don't see how different it is from the previous ones which I had. So thanks for making that, and thanks for the candid conversation. I think I love that about it. So thanks a lot for jumping in and adding it, and thanks people for joining in as well. So yeah, thanks Rohit. Thanks once again for joining in the Maker series.
Thanks so much, and thanks for everybody who took the time out and were here to just be a part of this conversation. I absolutely loved it, Lakshman, and I look forward to many more like this.
That's awesome, man.
Thanks.
So I'll be publishing this on YouTube. I'll share the link. I'll be sharing the link to people who joined in as well. See you guys in the next webinar, and cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.